It's funny, I was talking to a teammate earlier today, and we were talking about feelings versus actually knowing and having data, right? And we're just in a time this year, in a time in this generation where everybody feels, but nobody really knows. And so it seems to, I don't know how to say it. It seems like excuses, but it's not an excuse. I can empathize, but I have no sympathy. Put it like that. There's an article in News One, 2024 election, black women have experienced another injury to their hearts. And I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean? It's not easy for black women to quickly move on or rush into the next house that is on fire. I don't understand what that means. I don't really grasp that. Well, it goes on to say many black women felt President Joe Biden was unfit to run for a second term, but nobody said anything. If you felt he was unfit to run for a second term, you should have been saying that during his first term, not in the last 100 days, not in the last 107 days that Kamala Harris had to run. They said, and should have never entered the race in the first place. Instead, he entered and remained long past what was advisable. That meant that Vice President Kamala Harris had less than 107 days to assemble a presidential campaign, raise enough funds to be competitive, and crisscross the country to make her plea to the American people. That's not true. She raised $1 billion. But then they make this statement. She raised over $1 billion in 3 months and accompanied the impossible, readily embodying, and actually it was $2 billion, but close to $2 billion, readily embodying black girl magic. What is that? This black girl magic thing drives me crazy because it takes away from the power and the grit and the resilience and the tenacity of a black woman. So was living through slavery black girl magic? Was raising your family when your husband had to go off to work black girl magic? Is it being a mother and a worker and an executive and handling PTA and other groups and your sorority and all this other stuff, Eastern Star, and then turn around and be a wife? Like, is that black girl magic? Or is that just a powerful woman? Ain't nothing magical about it. They did it because they have to do it. And I think we give black women, we lessen the power that they have. Let's call a spade a spade. The Democratic Party messed up. And they knew, and they're starting to say now, that he was not fit for office when he got it. He was not fit for office when he ran. But the problem was this. Nobody would say it because everybody followed the party. And that's a problem. And so now we have what we have. So let's not blame issues that went on that had nothing to do with Kamala Harris. The issue is the Democratic Party. The article goes on to say that for many black women, Vice President Kamala Harris's loss represents a chronic betrayal. Whether it is politics, academia, healthcare, or the nonprofit sector, we often feel our backs are against the rope and we have little time or resources to do what is expected of us. We often comment on a lack of support and a lack of recognition when we pull off what even our rivals couldn't do. Now, that's true. Like a lot of us, Vice President Harris was set up to fail. Well, was she? She made the decision to run. Don't take that away from her. Don't start blaming outside entities and outside people when the decision was made by her to run. There was positioning done where she didn't have to go to the convention and plead her case. And they voted ahead of time to make sure there was not a race at the convention. So let's not paint it in a way that's what I call disingenuous. Yet she took the lot that was handed to her and did her very best. She did. She made magic and is now being shamed instead of celebrated. It's not easy for black women to quickly move on or rush into the next house that's on fire. Our hearts have been injured. We're exhausted. Welcome to the club. But one thing we have to remember, this is a normal, ongoing thing. This just didn't happen. It didn't just happen. And who's shaming her? I'm not shaming her. It wasn't her fault. It was the Democratic Party's fault. And sometimes you have to have the temerity to stand up and say, no, I'm not doing that. That is not going to end well. Ahead of time. Ahead of time. Because you can use the politics that you want. You can use the politics and hate Trump. You can use the politics and hate Republicans and conservatives. But in the end, they're going into office. And as we've healed ourselves so many times before, we could do it again. And that's what the article talks about. Healing is possible. But my question and my unreadiness is, if there's enough pain for you to question and you fall apart, I think there's some self-realization and some self-evaluation that needs to take place. You should never let anybody in the world, maybe your children, maybe your spouse, affect you in a way that you feel that defeated and that broken down and that hurt that you need to heal. And I'm not talking to just women. I'm talking to men as well. It's time to move forward. It's 2025, and it's time to move forward. It's great. All the things we do are great. We put our best foot forward. But the article ends with having to understand that healing can happen. The author says, Sabrina Ndiaye, and I apologize saying her last name, N''Diaye, is a psychotherapist. And I'm not disagreeing. I'm just commenting on the article itself. It ends with something truthful. Healing can happen. I witness its beauty every day. I will take time. It will take community. It will take intentionality. It will take trust. It ain't going to take community. Do it yourself. Build up your resilience so that you can help the community. But I personally believe we have so much over-reliance on the community that we forget that you still got to get it and put it in. You still got to put the work in. And we sometimes forget that. It's wonderful. And I know I feel alone every day when I go to work. I get it. I feel lonesome every single day. But when we talk about this being black girl magic, as if there's something magical about it, when in fact it was hard, treacherous work, we can't be using phrases like black girl magic. I think that lessens the power that a black woman who has risen to the highest that a black woman has ever risen, including a white woman, but any woman. I don't want to diminish the fact that calling her black, but she happens to be an African-American, Afro-Asian woman and a woman. She reached the highest pinnacle as vice president. But if we call that magic, I call that, I don't know, poppycock, empty talk, nonsense. But then I got to channel Tory Lowe. You know what that is? That's garbage. But that's my word. Tory would look at you and say, that's trash.
And that is Dr. Ken's Truth on the new 101.7 The Truth.